We're learning the first Sikha on Parshas Pinchas, Chelek Chav Gimel, on page 182. The shir today is being learned to Nishmas Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Menashe Kaltman. Oifem Pasik in Parshas ben Slavchad, Vatamoidna lefnei Moshe v'lefnei Elazar Kohen v'lefnei Asnesiim v'chol ha'eda Pesach Hayomayid. So the story of Nois Slavchad, they came to demand that they also want to have a portion in Eretz Yisrael. So they stood, so the pasuk says first in front of Moshe, then in front of Elazar HaKohen, and then in front of all the Nesiim, and in front of all the Yidden, Chol ha'eda. Where? Pesach Hayomayid. Leimar. Brengt sich in Sifri, a plukte in Pirish HaPasuk. So in the Sifri, there's an argument, how do we interpret this pasuk here? And it begins with a question. If Moshe lehayi yideya, Elazar hayi yideya. If Moshe doesn't know the halacha, does Elazar know the halacha? How could the pasuk say that they asked the question first to Moshe and then to Elazar? Ela sares hamikra v'dorsheyu. So you have to change the order of the pasuk, that it was the opposite order. First Elazar and then Moshe Rabbeinu. Divrei Rabbi Yeshia. That's Rabbi Yeshia's opinion. Abba Chanan hayomer. However, Abba Chanan would say, Bebeis hamedrash hayu. They were sitting together in Beis Hamedrash. Ubav amdu lefneim, and they came and stood in front of them and asked the question in the presence of Moshe, Elazar, the Nesiim. So there's no need to change the order of the pasuk. This is the Sifri on the pasuk in this week's parsha. Dieselbe plukte werd gebracht in Sifri in noch zwei Jerte. The same argument is quoted in another two places where you see a similar thing. Aleph in Parshas Pesach Sheni in Parshas Baloischa. From pasuk vayikrivu lefnei Moshe v'lefnei Aaron. Over there as well, when there were the Yidden that couldn't bring the carbon Pesach, so they came to Moshe and Aaron to ask or to demand Lama Nigara. So there it also says first Moshe and then Aaron. And Beis, in another place, in Parshas Mekoshe Sheitzim. The story about the Mekoshe Sheitzim, there was a Yid that was Mechal Shabbos by collecting woods, according to one opinion, in Parshas Shlach, which is in Parshas Shlach, if in Pasik, V'yakrivu Eisai el Moshe vel Aaron vel Kol ha'eda. So here as well it says first Moshe and then Aaron. Okay, so there, in those two psukim, so the Sifri brings the two opinions, Rabbi Yeshia and Abba Chanan, whether you have to change the order of the pasuk, or they just came in front of them when they were sitting together in Beis Medrash. Und da sieht man an Inyan Tamua and Pirish Rashi. See here, regarding these three places, we see a wonder how Rashi addresses it. In Parshas Baloischa is mefarish lifnei Moshe v'lifnei Aaron. So in Parshas Baloischa, the first time this comes up, so there Rashi says, K'shishneim yeshvu Beis Hamedrash bo v'shalom. They were both sitting together in Beis Hamedrash, and they came and asked them together the question. V'lo yitachal loima zeh achazeh. Then Rashi clarifies, it can't be that they asked first Moshe and then Aaron. Shemoshe lo yayedeya Aaron minayin lo. If Moshe doesn't know, how would Aaron HaKohen know? So what do we see here? Nemteram b'pashtus kedas Abba Chanan. Rashi is only bringing the opinion of Abba Chanan. Oif el Moshe vel Aaron v'chol ha'eda in Parshas Shlach. Then in Parshas Shlach, by the story of Mekoshe, is Rashi garnet mefarish. Rashi does not comment about this, about the order of how the question was asked. Und in unser Parsha bringt beide Deis ub'shem Imran. Here Rashi brings both opinions, Rabbi Yeshia and Abba Chanan, and Dafke here Rashi quotes the names of the ones that said the two opinions in the pasuk. Okay, so obviously the question is, why in three places each time Rashi is mefarish differently? And also b'shem Imran, this is a klal that Rashi brings names because it's adding something to understanding the Pirish. Why Dafke here is Rashi adding the name? Now, das was Rashi is gar mefarish in Parshas Shlach. The fact that in Parshas Shlach Rashi doesn't comment at all, that could be answered. As a philosopher, as we would gedenken, sein Pirish in the Friedige Seder, Baloischa. You realize that you'll remember, he just explained it in a Parsha before in Baloischa. Aber das, was bei Parsha Seine bringt beide Deis, ub'shem Imran, is in ganz nicht verstandig. The fact that Rashi quotes it here with the names, that's not understood at all. Von dem, was Rashi bringt in Parshas Baloischa, nor dem Pirish, k'shishneim yeshvim chulu. If Rashi in Parshas Baloischa only quotes the pshat that they were both sitting together in Beis Medrash, is move on as blois der Pirish from Abba Chanan is masim in pshuta shemikra. So Rashi only quotes this opinion of Abba Chanan because that's the only pshat that fits into the simple reading of a pasuk. Und wie sie moving the pashtus, it's simply understood as sares hamikra is nit glatik in pshuta shel mikra. To have to rearrange the words out of order here, that the pasuk is out of order, is obviously not smooth in understanding a pasuk. Rabbi Yoshi allein is madgish, sorry, samikra vidarsheyu. That you have to darshan, you have to expound the pasuk and read it differently than it's written. As man darf ankommen zum derech hadrash, this is not pshat. But by contrast, when it comes to what Rashi explains here in our parsha, here Rashi does bring both opinions. Is mochach as oich das Rabbi Yoshi is behesem to pshutish mikra. So it must be that Rabbi Yoshi's opinion that we're changing the order in the pasuk does fit with pshutish mikra. So the question is this idea of soris hamikra pshutish mikra or not? From Balaischa we see where Rashi brings it. Rashi skips this pshat, so that's not, and here Rashi brings it. The stile is noch starker damit, was Rabbi Yoshi is pirish, is noch makdim to pirish von Abachanan. In this week's parsha, the pshat of Rabbi Yoshi, which is Saris HaMikra, Rashi brings it actually even before Abachanan. Nachmer, the question is even stronger. In Parshas Balaischa steht nor lefnei Moshe v'lefnei Aaron. That the question was asked to Moshe and then to Aaron. So if you have to change the order, so it's the order of these two. Kommt as the Siris HaMikra is benegeh drei. Nesiim, Elazar, Moshe. You have to switch the order of the pasuk with all three. They first asked the Nesiim, then they didn't know, then Elazar, then Moshe. So it's a bigger change in the order of the pasuk. And Hafat became, bringt Rashi the Pirish of Rabbi Yoshi from Rabbi Yoshi Dafke Da. Where does Rashi bring the opinion of Rabbi Yoshi to change the order? That's Dafke over here, where changing the order is the bigger deal than changing it in Parshas Balaischa. So why does Rashi do this? Okay, so in Sif Beis, the Rebbe suggests a possible explanation. So seemingly the explanation would be as follows. As the Shinu zwischen die zwei Pirushi Rashi in Parshas Balaischa on in Parshas Seinu is verbunden mit den Shinu Haloshenim de Psukim. The difference in the way Rashi explains the Psukim is based on a difference in the language of the Psukim themselves. In Parshas Balaischa steht no lefnei Moshe v'lefnei Aaron. Because in Parshas Balaischa, as we pointed out before, it says only in front of Moshe and in front of Aaron, is the Rebbe mistaver like pshutish mikra to mefarish dayin kesheshneim yeshim in Beis HaMedrash chulu. That since it's only the two of them, so they too were sitting in the Beis HaMedrash. Mashenkim b'Parshas Seinu, where the pasuk is Mosif oich v'chol ha'eda by us, and over here the pasuk says Moshe, Aaron, the Nesiim, and kol ha'eda, which seemingly refers to all Yidden. Is the far Rashi do nit mefarish bepirish arishim va'ikri as bebeis medrash hoyeshvin. So Rashi does not bring first and as the main pshat that they were sitting in beis medrash, while bepashtus is nit shayach as kol ha'eda zol zayin in beis medrash. Because simply, what does this mean that all of Klal Yisrael is sitting together with Moshe Rabbeinu and beis medrash? How is that possible? So that's why here Rashi begins with the pshat of Rabbi Yoshi that you have to switch the order of the pasuk. But this is not a correct pshat, that this is why Rashi changes his pirish over here from Balaischa. Because, so first, Levadzois, was lefizev vertzerik shver, havas Rashi bavorn garnet in Parsha Shlach. If this is really the problem, then here the pasuk adds v'chol ha'edos, and now the question becomes regarding Parsha Shlach, why doesn't Rashi comment there? Hayes as eich dort is the pasuk Meisif al Moshe al Aaron ve'el kol ha'eda. This addition of El Kol Ha'eda doesn't come only here in Parshas Pinchas, but already before in Parshas Shlach. It adds Kol Ha'eda. Ubemele kemen shein nit sagen kanal as the verlost sich dort of sein Pirish in Parshas Balaischa kishe yeshim beis HaMedrash. If we'll say that Kol Ha'eda makes it impossible to say that they came together in the Beis Medrash, then Rashi should address this already in Parshas Shlach. But it's nice of Lezeh, in addition to this, Kosher, this pshat is difficult to accept because Rashi, Alein, at Beferish gesagt in Seif Parshas Tisa. Rashi already said in the end of Parshas Tisa, Keitzat Seder HaMishnah. What was the order of the Yidden, the way they learned Torah from Moshe Rabbeinu? And within the Seder, Rashi says the following expression, Nichnasu kol ha'am. The entire nation, or they all entered to learn. Das heißt, als in dem Ort bis zum Medrash, wo Moshe hat gelernt, Torah mit Yidden, sind in Arayin Kala, that the place where Moshe Rabbeinu learned Torah, everybody entered there. Is doch memelo euch benitten die Dank kein Kashtin nicht, as hat sich, wie hat sich Kol Ha'eda gefunden in Beis HaMedrash. So there's no question how all Yidden are in the Beis Medrash. However, this is possible, but the fact is Rashi already said this as a fact before in Parshas Kisisa. So So that can't be the issue here. Only tam bezet, and the reason why it's not a question. Kol the expression of kol ha'om, kol ha'eda, similar expression, the entire congregation, meant nit alle Yidden mamish. It doesn't mean all Yidden literally. Nor die welch haben gewollt learnen. Those that wanted and came to hear the Torah from Moshe Rabbeinu. Und bei mir ist nicht doch keine Schwierigkeit zum Mefarisch sein, as they alle, Moshe, Lozer, the Nisim, and Kol Eidos, and Gevem, Beis HaMedrash. So there's no question how all together were sitting in the Beis HaMedrash. It includes all Yidden that wanted to come learn Torah. So there was enough space for them. That's a very simple thing we could say regarding the two expressions, Ha'am, Kol Ha'am, and Kol Ha'eda. Noch mehr, furthermore, in unser Pasuk is noch glatter zu einlernen as Beis HaMedrash HaYoshvim. In our Pasuk, it's even simpler to say that the meaning is that they were all sitting in Beis Medrash together. Weil da steht doch der Lashon Kol Ha'eda, the entire congregation. Nicht Kol Ha'am, it doesn't say the entire nation. Und Rashi hat schon früher mefarish gewesen, kam upon him more than once. Rashi already explained, as Kol Ha'eda can euch meinen nor die Sanhedrin. The expression of Kol Ha'eda does not have to mean the entire nation, all Yidden, but it can mean the entire Sanhedrin. The Yidden here was sitting, all the Nisim and the Sanhedrin. So the question comes back, for was as Rashi, euch da nit mefarish wie früher as be Beis Medrash HaYoshvim als Pirish Rishon ve'Ikri. Why doesn't Rashi bring this as the first and main pshat, which is much simpler than just changing the order in the pasuk? So in Siv Gimel, there's another suggested pshat here. Es ist voran noch a shinoi zwischen dem pasuk beParshas Seinu und dem pasuk beParshas Baleischa. There's another difference between the pasuk earlier in Parleischa and here the pasuk in this week's parsha. Was the mid what l'chayre gekent mevays and dem time for was Rashi is da misharef as frieding im Pirish, and this could be a possible explanation for the change in Rashi's Pirish. In Parshas Parleischa wird nicht angedatet im pasuk wo Moshe và Aaron sind gewen. It doesn't tell you in the pasuk. It doesn't indicate where Moshe and Aaron were at that time. The Rebbe ken Rashi teitchen k'shneim yoshim bebeis hamedrash. Bo v'shalom. So therefore Rashi can say that the pshat is they were sitting together in Beis Medrash, and that's where the question was asked to them. Aber in unser Parsha steht befehlish in Pasuk as there's an event Pesach El Mayid. Here the Pasuk says their location. They were sitting at the entrance of the El Mayid. Kemezagin as the far will Rashi not learn in Bepirush Yarishim ve'Ikri as Beis Medrash HaYoshvim. So therefore Rashi can't say that they were sitting together in Beis Medrash, because the Pasuk clearly says that they weren't in Beis Medrash. They were Pesach El Mayid. So that's why Rashi has to first bring the pshat of Soris HaMikra v'Darshayu. Aber euch die Asbar is nit maspik. But this explanation is insufficient as well. Weil, for two reasons. Aleph, number one, bepashtus sind Pesach HaEl Mayid und Beis HaMedrash beide gewen b'makom echad. Simply, you can say that the location of Pesach HaEl Mayid and Beis Medrash is the same, one and the same. Pesach HaEl Mayid wird gemeint der Chatzar Mishkan. It refers to the courtyard of the Mishkan, where the Mizbeach is. Und euch the Beis Medrash is given in Chatzar Mishkan. The Beis HaMedrash was also there in the courtyard of the Mishkan. Leben Mizbeach, not far from the Mizbeach. Wie Rashi sagt only from Parshas Mishpatim, as Rashi already explained in the beginning of Parshas Mishpatim, Shetasim Sanhedrin Eitzel HaMizbeach, that the Sanhedrin has to be sitting near the Mizbeach. So that's the place where the Sanhedrin was. So this is the Beis Medrash. The Melech came and sagen as Pesach El Mayid meant the Beis HaMedrash. So you could say that Pesach El Mayid is a Beis HaMedrash. So Rashi could bring the same pshat he brought before that it refers to Beis Medrash. Another point there is, even if you'll argue and say, as mekanet zagin, as their pasuk, zol mit Pesach El Mayid meinen Beis HaMedrash. That here, in this pasuk, when it says that where were they were Pesach El Mayid, that it means Beis Medrash. Is hagufa time boy. This itself needs explanation why they're not, why is Pesach El Mayid over here not Beis Medrash? If you were distinguishing, if we're making a distinction, that is, that Pesach El Mayid dafka does not mean Beis HaMedrash, but why not? It's definitely possible to say that it is. So why should we argue to say that Rashi does not want to touch Beis Medrash because of the lashon Pesach El Mayid? Why not? Why can't we put them together? Another point there is, was is the hechrich bechlal lefi pirish Rashi zeh zum mefared sein as be Beis Medrash hayu? What's bechlal forcing Rashi to say this detail that they were sitting together? Where they were sitting together in the Beis Medrash. Rashi had gedacht nor zogin vi frier. All Rashi would have to say is a lashon that Rashi already said earlier, Lifnei kulam amdu. So before, if you look over here in Rashi already used this kind of expression that the Bnei Slavchad came and stood in front of them to ask the question. So here as well, Rashi could use this lashon lifnei kulam amdu. They came and stood together in front of them. On vudas is given steht doch bekasav. Where exactly Moshe and Aaron were, that the pasuk already says Pesach Hayol Mayid. So over here, it's not necessary for Rashi to point out where Moshe and Aaron were sitting together. So if so, the question is, why is Rashi over here emphasizing the fact that they were sitting in Bismedrash together? In order to answer the question that they were how could the question be asked first to Moshe and then afterwards to Elazar? So what's the answer? The answer is simply that they were asked when they were sitting together. So they were asked both together. The fact that they were sitting with Bismedrash, why is that Negeya here? Okay, so Sivdale, the Rebbe explains us. And the first Nukuda, the Rebbe will come here to explain why is it necessary for Rashi to add this Nukuda that they were sitting together, not stand together, but they were sitting together in Beis HaMedrash. Let's get a clearer understanding of this question that the Sifri, the Gemara, and Rashi ask. How is it possible if Moshe Rabbeinu did not know that now the question was asked to Aaron HaKohen or to Elazar? So the pshat is as follows. From Pirish Rashi is mashma. From the words of from Rashi, it seems as pshat lashon hakosov is mechiach, that the simple reading of the language of the pasuk proves as the shaila from the anoshim hashahoya goyme or from Bnei Slavchad, whether the people that couldn't bring the korban pesach or Bnei Slavchad is gefragt geworden vayederen for the nishalim bazunder. Each one of these people that were here, that were present, were asked the question. Aber, and then, the fact that all that are mentioned in the pasuk, they were both asked, but this could be in one or two ways. Bedibur echad bevasachas, you can ask two people a question, and both of them are being asked, and both of them are listening and are being asked this question separately, but you're saying the question once to both of them together. Or it could be zeh, or it could be that you ask first one, and then you ask the other. Was der Fall ist noch, denn wie Rashi hat bei Parshas Baleschem mefarish gewinnt, keshe shneim yoshim bebeis hamedrash bo v'shalom. After Rashi explains that they were both sitting in the Beis HaMedrash, and they came and they asked them the question together, is meidich nid v'darke b'kamim b'kaimis. Rashi continues and explains, not as usual, Rashi doesn't usually negate a pshat that's wrong. He just tells you the pshat and that's it. But here Rashi negates, and it's to shayla zayin ha'oifim b'zeh achazeh. Rashi negates that you shouldn't think that they were both asked, and they were asked one after the other. V'lo yitach alay mezeh achazeh. You can't say that over here the pshat is that they were asked one after the other. Because Aaron wouldn't be asked after Moshe. Well, derech zeh b'parshas seinu. V'abavared b'pirushay efshe Moshe lo yada laza yedeh. How's it possible Allah is asked after Moshe? So why is Rashi bavarning this? Because in the language of the pasuk, it lends itself to be mefarish that it's zeh achazeh. They were both asked. The lashon of the pasuk, as the Rebbe soon will explain why, but the lashon of the pasuk is mashma that they were both asked this question. So therefore Rashi has to bavarin. So both being asked could very well be b'zeh achazeh. So therefore Rashi has to explain, no, it can't be b'zeh achazeh. Furthermore, noch dem Rashi bepirusha beparsha sein is meitek from pasuk lifnei Moshe. Is mamshech Moshe va'achakach lifnei Elazar. So Rashi says, Rashi is sort of explaining the language of the pasuk. So he quotes lifnei Moshe, and then Rashi adds within the lashon of the pasuk itself ve'achakach, and afterwards the question was asked in front of Elazar. But Shleima, as the myth is Rashi eisen some madgish, why is Rashi quoting the pasuk this way and inserting the words va'achakach? So Rashi wants to emphasize as the word v'lifnei main punkt wie es wollt stehen im pasuk va'achakach lifnei Elazar. Rashi is telling you the simple reading of the pasuk is as if the pasuk says that the question was asked lifnei Moshe and va'achakach lifnei Elazar. Afterwards, it was asked to Elazar. So not only is the pasuk in the pshat of the pasuk written in such a way that it could mean that they were both asked with one dibur b'vasachas. And it could also mean b'zeh achazeh, but over here Rashi is actually saying that the lashon of the pasuk is mashma that first Moshe Rabbeinu was asked, and then with another dibur, Elazar was asked. So why is this the pshat of the pasuk? Where do you see this? So the explanation here is Then in Pasuk Volt gestanden lefnei Moshe ve'Aaron, that they came and asked the question to Moshe and Aaron, just with a vav, Moshe and Aaron. Al derech ze lefnei Moshe ve'Elazar goymer, Volt gewen moving as the shaila is gefrekt geworden einmal. So then you could say that the question was asked once, for Moshe, it was asked only to Moshe, Zayinik mit Aaron, it was asked to Moshe when he was sitting together with Aaron. Das kann euch heißen, als die Shaila ist gefragt geworden, beikir by Moshe. So this could mean that the question is being asked primarily to Moshe. Of course, he's the one that you would ask the question to. Aaron was also sitting there. But really, there was one question that was primarily asked to Moshe. Und das ist das Wert im Mund euch Aaron v'chayetze b'zeh, and the fact that it mentions that Aaron was there is nor, weil b'mitzias is a damit gewend, zusammen mit Moshe. Since Aaron listened to the question as well, and he was actually sitting there, so therefore the pasuk mentions that Aaron or Elazar were also sitting there together. But that's if the pasuk would just say Moshe ve'Aaron or Moshe ve'Elazar. Then I would say that the question was primarily to Moshe. Bald, aber as the pasuk sagt, bazunder lefnei, which means it says v'lefnei Aaron. After it says Lefnei Moshe, then it adds another Lefnei that it was in front of Aaron or in front of Elazar. Is das machriach Rashi zu lernen, as die Shaila is gefragt geworden, bazunder by Aaron und Elazar v'cholo. That we must say that the Shaila was asked to both, to Moshe and to Aaron, or to Moshe and to Elazar. That's why it says, again, v'lefnei. It was asked to both of them. So now, if this is the case, but you can't say that they were asked, both were asked the question, but how? They were asked in the order of first one and then the other. As it comes in the order of the pasuk. As noch gefragt by Moshe, hat man gefragt by Aaron. That can't be. The Rebbe, sagt Rashi, k'sheshneim yeshvim bebeis ha-medrash ba v'shalom. So here's the diok. Rashi has to say not only that Moshe and Aaron were sitting together, but they were both sitting together in Beis Medrash. Was in dem Eifin is the Shaila gewendet zu Aaron, Punkt wie zu Moshe could come on. After when they sit together in Beis Medrash, then you could say that this question is being asked both to Moshe and to Aaron. They're both equally being asked this question. So this is the Nekudah of the Rebbe's Hezber. If the pasuk would not say Lefnei Moshe, Lefnei Aaron, if it would just simply say Lefnei Moshe v'Aaron, so then Rashi wouldn't add the words Beis HaMedrash. Rashi would simply say that what happened? They were sitting together. That would be the answer. And what would be the pshat? That the question was primarily asked to Moshe, and Aaron happened to be sitting there. He was listening as well. But not that the question was also asked to Aaron. So there's no problem that it also says that Aaron was there, but Mitzias, he was there. But now that it says Lefnei Moshe v'Lefnei Aaron, that they were actually both asked the question, and it can't be Bezeh Chazeh, that's what Rashi is explaining. So therefore it must be that they were both asked together. In what scenario are they both being asked together? Stam, if Moshe is sitting together with Aaron, you can't say that the question is being asked to Aaron equally to Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu is the Rebbe of the whole Klal Yisrael. Stam, if they're sitting together, so then Moshe is the main one that's asking the question. What matziv is it that you could say that Moshe and Aaron are being asked equally together with one dibur when they sit together in a Beis Medrash? Dafka there, they are both being asked together in one dibur. So it fits into the words of the pasuk, Lefnei Moshe and Lefnei Aaron. What's the point of Beis Medrash? So in Sifei, the Rebbe explains, Beis HaMedrash is an art v'malerin and Torah zusammen. Beis Medrash is a place where everyone learns Torah together. Nicht an art wo Eden versammeln sich zu hören Torah, Halacha, Drasha, v'chayetze b'zeh von HaChacham. It's not a place where you gather to hear Torah or Halacha or a Drasha from a Chacham that's teaching. Das heißt, in other words, and that's the expression, the meaning of the words, if you just translate the words, Kipshuta, Rashi, Pshuta Shemikra, when Rashi says the words Beis HaMedrash, so the words Beis HaMedrash is a place where everyone learns together. Das heißt, Agam, as in Beis HaMedrash, is Farana Rav, Rosh Hashiva, V'chayetze b'zeh. There is a Rav, and Rosh Hashiva, or someone similar. Und Zenedot Talmidim, and then there are the students. Und zwischen die Talmidim, Gufa Zenedot, Chilukim b'Mailasam. There's various levels amongst the students. Afapikain is there in from Beis HaMedrash. What's the point of a Beis Medrash? The word Beis Medrash means as alle Yoshvei Beis HaMedrash, everyone that sits in the Beis Medrash and is a mishtatif in the limud. Everyone learns together. Everyone learns, participates equally in learning. Herem di Shaila, Shaklevataryanir, V'chulu. Everyone listens together. Questions brought up in the Beis Medrash, and there is a discussion. Everyone discusses it together. That's the type of Beis HaMedrash, a house where all the learners join together to discuss matters of learning. The fun is euch move on as Shailas, welche werden gefragt in Beis HaMedrash, sind bei öfen Scheine, wie die Shailas, was man fragt, bei Mokim Yeshivas Bezdin, Dayim, bei Arav. When a question is asked in a Beis HaMedrash, it's very different than a question that's being brought to a place where a Bezdin sits, or a Dayan, a judge sits, or a Rav sits. When you come to the house, to the room where the Rav sits, and you're asking him a question. Shas man fragt a Shaila by Bezdin, Dayan, a Rav. If Rashi would say that the question is being asked to a Bezdin or a Dayan or a Rav, so then what does that mean? A Philip and the Bai Stein Talmidim, even if there are students that are present, is moving as the Shaila vet gefragt by the Bezdin. The question is being asked by the Bezdin. There are others that are there, they're listening into the question, and they may have an opinion as well, but they're not the ones that are really being asked the question. Similar to what the Rebbe said before, if Moshe and Aaron were stam sitting anywhere together, so of course the question is being directed primarily to Moshe. Aaron happens to be sitting there. Mashenk and Ashaylev was vet gefragt be Beis HaMedrash. The word Beis, what does the word Medrash mean? A place where everyone joins together to study, to expound, and to learn. Is he gewendet nit zum Reisha Beis Medrash? So then it's a question that's being asked in the Beis HaMedrash, in the house of study. So everyone present, everyone sitting there. So then everyone together will think about this question, and everybody could voice his opinion about the matter. That's what the idea of Beis HaMedrash means. That's what Rashi is saying here. That Moshe and Aaron were sitting together in the Beis HaMedrash, and that's where they were asked this question. Das, was Aaron gehört die Shaila. The reason Aaron was listening to this question is dass der Fahr was seine beide gewesen und gelernt Teire zusammen mit Beis HaMedrash. He heard it together with Moshe Rabbeinu. Where? In a place of Beis HaMedrash where they're learning together. Was der Rebbe die Shaila gefragt in demselben Eufen bei sie beide. So therefore the question is being asked actually to both of them on the same level. Lufnei Moshe v'lufnei Aaron. Because that's the matzav of Beis HaMedrash where they learn together and everything is discussed together. Das ist the time for was Rashi the Parsha Seinu is Mishana b'Pirish Hasheni from Lashon HaKosov Pesach Hayom Moed. So that's why Rashi does not use the language of the pasuk where it says Pesach Hayom Moed. That's where they were. Uzak b'Beis Medrash Hayu Yeshvin, and Rashi says that it was sitting in Beis Medrash. So if Rashi uses this expression earlier in Parshas Baloischa, the pasuk doesn't say where they were. So Rashi is saying Beis HaMedrash. But in our pasuk, the diuk that Rashi says Dafke Beis HaMedrash becomes even stronger. He changes from the lashon of the pasuk. Weil die Hasbar besteht da ka'amor in dem was is an gewen Beis HaMedrash and nit in dem Prat es is an gewen zusammen. Because here, what's the point? The answer to the question is not just simply the fact that the question was asked when Moshe and Aaron were sitting together. That wouldn't satisfy the lashon of the pasuk, because then it would mean that the question was directed primarily to Moshe, and Aaron happened to be there and was listening as well. But the pasuk says Lufnei Moshe, Lufnei Aaron. So the answer is Dafke in Beis Medrash, where things are discussed together. That's where the question was asked to both of them equally. So now in Sivav, the Rebbe explains the difference between Rashi in Baloischa and Rashi over here in our parsha. Apizes verstandig, was be Parsha Seinu nimmt Rashi nicht an dem Pirish als Pirish Rishon Vikri. We now understand why Rashi does not accept this pshat as the first and main pshat. So Rashi let in because Rashi understands as mit Pesach Hayom Moed is the pasuk Eisen nicht so zu anweisen der Ort wo sie seinen gewähnt. When the pasuk here does give us the location, right? In Parshas Baloischa does not give us the location. Here it does. Why is the pasuk giving us the location? It's not coming to tell us where they were. Because what relevance does it have where they were sitting? The fact that in Parshas Baloischa doesn't say it because it makes no difference where they were sitting. So why suddenly here does the pasuk say that they were Pesach Hayom Moed? Now this is Metaye beikir wie sie sind dort gewesen versammelt. It's not just saying the location, but it's describing the situation of how they were gathered together. Pesach Hayom Moed is the ort wo kol da kleibt sich zusammen. So at the Pesach Hayom Moed, which is really inside the courtyard of the Mishkan, that's the place where all Yidden gather. Nitoiv setzen sich lernen zusammen, not like the style in the Beis Medrash where everyone is there to learn together. It's actually the place where Moshe Rabbeinu comes to teach them. That's what Pesach Hayom Moed is. Komtais, as in unser Pasuk, is bepshotai nit der Inyan from Beis HaMedrash hayu. Nor Pesach Hayom Moed kanal hayu. So in our pasuk, in the simple pshat of the pasuk is pointing out Dafke Pesach Hayom Moed. It's coming to say that they were not in a place where they were all just joining together and discussing matters of learning. They were sitting Pesach Hayom Moed, which is listening to Moshe Rabbeinu teaching them. So then over here, it's very difficult to say that the pshat is that they were in Beis HaMedrash together. But Rashi still does bring this pshat as a second pshat. So b'toiche kemen zagin, you could squeeze into the pasuk here and say, as Pesach Hayol Mayid, that when the pasuk points out this detail of Pesach Hayol Mayid in sein Teichen als Makim HaKola, and the content of what it means, that it's the place where Yidden gather to listen to Moshe Rabbeinu, but tzitzich blois of the letzte werte v'choleida. That's a description only regarding all of Yidden that came there. It's not regarding Moshe and Aaron. Moshe, or Moshe and Elazar rather, in our parsha. Moshe, Elazar, und Nisim, bebeis HaMedrash hayu. They were sitting over here and studying together as it is in a house of study in Beis Medrash. Und die Shailas b'nei Slav chad is gefragt geworden bei sei alle mit zugleich, and therefore we could still say here that the pshat would be that it was asked to all of them equally. Kederach ha-Shailas was very gefragt by Beis Medrash kanal. Like all questions that are asked in the Beis Medrash. Und bei Oster Shah is kol ha'ed gestanden Pesach Hayol Mayid, but at the very same time, the rest of Klal Yisrael also came there to this place at the entrance of the Hayol Mayid in a matzav shel hakhola, not to study together, but gathering to listen to Moshe Rabbeinu. So Harim, was wird sein der Empfer of Tainus B'nai Slav Chad? Everyone wanted to hear what's going to be Moshe Rabbeinu's response. So Pesach Hayol Mayid is only referring to the last detail of Kol Ha'edah, but not to Moshe, Elazar, and the Nisim. They actually were sitting there and studying, like in a Beis Medrash. So therefore, it is still possible to say the pshat over here that they were sitting together in Beis Medrash. But since this is a very big squeeze to divide the pasuk in this way, as Moshe, Elazar, and Nisim, seine gesessen Beis Medrash. Moshe, Elazar, and Nisim, they were sitting together, like sitting and studying together in a Beis Medrash. And the rest of Eden just came stood to listen at the entrance of the Hayol Mayid. The Rebbe bringt Rashi als Pirish Harishon v'Ha'ikri. So here Rashi quotes as the first and main pshat Saris HaMikra, that we're going to change the order in the pasuk. As das was the pasuk sagt Lefnei Moshe v'Lefnei Elazar Kohen v'Lefnei Anisim is weil man hat sie gefragt zeh chazeh. The pasuk is emphasizing the lefnei and again lefnei to say that they were asked one after the other, and not because they were sitting together in a Beis Medrash, because that's not the simple pshat of the pasuk of Pesach Hayol Mayid. They were not sitting in the Beis Medrash. Nor the seder hashaylos is fakert with the seder in pasuk. Yeah, the pasuk is coming to tell you that they were asked one after the other, but we have to switch the order. So this is not such a big deichik as the previous deichik. Because to say that they were sitting in the Beis HaMedrash goes against the entire meaning of the pasuk. The pasuk clearly says that they were Pesach Hayol Mayid, not in Beis Medrash. But over here, it fits with the lashon of the pasuk Pesach Hayol Mayid, and therefore we know that one has to be asked first, and then the next one next, and so on. So it fits with the concept of Pesach Hayol Mayid, but the order has to be switched. Was leider Pirish kommt as kol divrei akasu zene kipshutan. That what it says here in the pasuk, the location and the way, the style and the matzav that they were in, the way they were asked is all literal. Und die Schwierigkeit is bloß in them was the pasuk is meshana the seder von den nishalim. The only problem over here is that the order of how they were asked, the pasuk switches. But the style of how the question was asked, we're sticking to the pshat of the pasuk. And the Rabbi adds over here that even this, that the pasuk switches the order regarding the how they were asked, is also not such a big question, because in the pasuk itself, it doesn't want to place a Talmud before the Rav. The Rav brings from the Rashbam, doesn't want to bring Elazar or the Nisim before Moshe, even though that was the order, but it wants to actually write the name of Moshe Rabbeinu before Elazar. That's why the pasuk changed the order. Okay, so over here, Saris HaMikra v'Dersheyu actually fits better in the pshat than taking the whole thing out of Pshutei and saying that Pesach Hayol Mayid only refers to Kol Ha'edah, and it doesn't refer to Moshe, Elazar, and the Nisim, because Moshe, Elazar, and the Nisim were actually learning like in a Beis Medrash together. That's why here Rashi switches from what he says in Parshas Baloischa. So now, Siv Zayin, we understand now the names, why Dafke here Rashi quotes the names. Und das ist the Tam, was Rashi is meitig, die zwei Perushim b'Shem Oimram, Rabbi Yeshia, V'Abba Chonon, to Madgish sein. Rashi wants to highlight as die zwei days, wie zu teischen dem Pasuk. The two opinions brought it, hard to interpret the Pasuk. Zime soll sagen, Saris HaMikra, as in ein und derselben Pasuk soll die Werte nicht stehen alle Seder. Should we say that it's out of order, even though it's one pasuk, but nevertheless it's out of order? Oder as es besser zu deichig sein, in Pirish HaKosav wie zu sagen, Saris HaMikra. Or we would rather say a pshat, which is a squeeze in the teichen of the pasuk, than switching the order of the pasuk. Right? So over here, Rashi is bringing these two pirushim, and there's a basis behind these two pirushim. And Rashi brings the first pirush first, and the second pirush second, and the basis between them is this discussion of what is more of a deichik in the pasuk. Is nitna beneged to them pasuk. So Rashi wants to point out that this is b'chlal two styles of approaching how to be mefarish the Torah. Not only in this pasuk, no, das is al shitase bekamen bekaimis v'shen Rabbi Yeshia and Rabbi Chanan. This is b'chlal an argument you find between Rabbi Yeshia and Rabbi Chanan and other places. Begefind bekamen bekaimis. As Rabbi Yeshia sagt, saris hamikra. Rabbi Yeshia's opinion is to change the order of the pasuk if necessary. Und shittas Rabbi Chanan is as medaf reingehen in a deichik in pirish aksuvim. It's better to squeeze the pshat of the pasuk up in nit sagen saris hamikra, but not to change the order of the pasuk. So the two names is showing you really the basis of the two pirushim that Rashi brings over here. That's why Rashi quotes the names. Okay, so this is the conclusion of the Hezber for the difference between Parshas Balaischa and over here in this week's Parsha. Now, Sif Chester, that becomes to Parshas Shlach, where there Rashi doesn't comment at all. Kolonal, wird man euch verstehen, für was Rashi bewahrend nicht, dieselbe Scheile bei Pirusha bei Parshas Mekoshish. Sorry. So why is it that in Parshas Shlach, in the story of the Mekoshish, Rashi doesn't comment at all? Bald, as the Kashi besteht in dem, was Jeden haben sich gewendet mit der Scheile in Halacha euch zu Aaron Chulu. What's the question here? The question is that there's a question about a halacha, Shaila about a halacha, and it's being asked to Aaron after Moshe Rabbeinu was asked already. Is das in Parshas HaMekoshish can kashin it? So in the story of the Mekoshish, it's not a question at all. Why not? So Rashi sagt, because there Rashi explains what happened there. They didn't know that they knew he's chayiv misa, it was machal Shabbos, but exactly which one of the four different ways to be machayiv misa, that they didn't know. Machal Shabbos v'misa. Thus, hey, so we can say as follows: as they bring him to Moshe v'Aaron v'chol they brought the Mekoshish to Moshe and Aaron, all the Yidden is beikir given nit l'shem shaila and halacha. They weren't coming to ask a shaila, or at least primarily, it wasn't about the shaila of which misa. No, ze zenen gegangen im ibegeben b'rishus hatzibur. Here's the Machal Shabbos. They came to give him over to the possession of all the Yidden, that they should fulfill with him what has to be done as the tzibur. So oisfir and einish misa, that the people, everyone, should give him the punishment that he deserves misa. Velach misa does after tzibur mevarezai. Now, after he's given over to the tzibur, so then the tzibur will have to figure out which chiv misa. But since they knew that he's definitely chayiv misa, so the first step is to give him over to the tzibur. That was the main reason why they came here. The Mele is nicht schwer, for was man vergleicht Aaron v'chol zu Moshe, why they're all being compared together. Weil da redt sich wegen Misire l'reshus hatzibur, Moshe, Aaron v'chol. So over here, when it says Moshe and Aaron and kol ha'eda, similar to what we said before regarding Beis HaMedrash, that when they are in the Beis HaMedrash, so they're all together discussing, and therefore the question is asked to all of them equally. Legabe, this Indian over here, giving them over to the tzibur, so we can say Moshe and Aaron Chol Ha'eda are one and the same. It's not a shayla and halacha which should be be'ikr to Moshe. Giving over to the tzibur, they're all the tzibur. So that's why the seder of the pasuk is not a question l'chatchila here. Okay, now there's yet another place, a fourth place that the Rabbi brings here in Siftes, where there was a question that was asked. There's another place in Torah which is similar to these places here where the Yidden had a suffix and they came to ask a question. In the Parshas Mekal, the Parshas Sema, steht in Pasuk, Vayeviu Oster Moshe. There was this person that was Mekalel, and he was brought to Moshe Rabbeinu, and over there it said, Vayeviu Oster Moshe, nor to Moshe Nalein. Here the question was asked only by Moshe. Move on. So seemingly it's not understood here. They're Mekoshish and they're Mekalels and Geven bePerik Echad. The story with the Mekoshish and this Mekalel here happened in the same time period. Rashi sagt dort, as Rashi says, is Havos by Mekalel is the Avah Geven nor to Moshe. Und by the Mekoshish to Moshe v'Aaron v'chol ha'eda. So what's the difference? Why were they only to Moshe, and here the Mekoshish is being brought to sort of all the Klal Yisrael? Move on. But based on what we explained, it's simply understood. Rashi Zogdart, and that's what Rashi himself already explains over there by the Mekalel, or Rashi explains by the Mekoshish. That I'm not sure where this Rashi is. Perhaps it is by the Mekalel. Yodim hayo sham Mekoshish b'misa. Regarding the Mekoshish, they knew that he's chayiv misa. Avaloi peirush lahem be'ezeh misa. They just didn't know which misa. Aval b'mekalel hu oimel lifresh lahem shelehoy yedim im chayiv misa lav. Over here, the question was, is he chayiv misa not for what he did? That was unknown until this point. So this so what do we understand from this? By the mekalel is given an inyan from Ashayla and Alocha. This is a question in Alocha here. It's here as mechuyev misa or nit. Is move on as medaf to wenden to Moshe Rabbeinu. So with such a question, you have to turn to Moshe Rabbeinu. So that's what the pasuk says, that the question was asked only to Moshe. Ashenkim by Mekoshish. Was Yoidim Hayu as is chayiv misa. So here by the Mekoshish they knew that he is chayiv misa. The Rebbe is beikir nor given das as haben dem chayiv misa gebracht zu dem Tzibur. Moshe, Aaron, v'chol Eida. So over here they're bringing him to the entire Tzibur, to give him over to the entire Tzibur. So it happened in the same time period. It could have been was literally at the same time. But over here was a Shaila and Alocha, so it's being asked to Moshe Rabbeinu. But over here it's a Shaila, or not a Shaila. Here they're giving him over to the Tzibur. So everyone else that was there, Moshe and Aaron, v'chol Eida, they gave him over to the Tzibur. Okay, so that's what we understand now. All three psukim, or even the fourth place, where you have a Shaila that's asked whether to Moshe and Aaron together, Moshe and Elazar together, or giving over to Kol Eida, or over here when they were not sitting in Bismedrash by the Mekalel, and it was just asked by Moshe Rabbeinu. As if you, the Rebbe will explain this inyan in Apichsidis and Yenishal Teira. So from Yenishal Teira shall be Pirish Rashi. It's a deeper understanding, the wine of Teira, that we take out from this Rashi is as follows. The Tam Pnimi, was Rashi bringt die Pirushim Dafke bei der Parsha von Pesach Sheni und Parshas Bnei Slavchad und nicht bei Parshas Mekoshish Eitzim. Deeper understanding of why Rashi only addresses this question in these two places, of Baleischa by the Parsha of Pesach Sheni and here by Parshas Slavchad, but by the Mekoshish Eitzim in Shlach, Rashi doesn't say anything. So Yeshleimar, we can answer as follows. Weil der Teichen von den Pirushim hat Shayches, so der Eufen wie die Parsha is gesagt geworden. Because the content of these Pirushim that Rashi brings here is connected to the unique way how these Parshiyos were said to Klal Yisrael. So the Chiddush and the zwei Parshiyos is, what's unique about these two Parshiyos is as follows. Es ist eine Nimshach und gesagt geworden, Mulmaila durch Hataine und Bakasha Samata. It's revealed and brought down and told to Yidden only after there was a argument and Yidden demanded from below that they wanted to have an answer. They wanted to fulfill this mitzvah. Parshas Pesach Sheni is gekommen durch die Teine von die Anoshim asher hayu tmeim. Lama nigara lebilti haktiv goyim. The Yidden that were tamei demanded, why should we be left out? Und durch Tainis of Akashas b'nei Slavchad. And also the demand and the request of Bnei Slavchad, Lama yigara shem avinu no lanu achuzah goyim. Why should our father not have a portion in Eretz Yisrael just because he has only daughters? He should also get a portion. It's gesagt geworden Parshas Nachlas. That's when the Parsha of Nachlas was said. Und das ist richtig Scheiches zu die zwei Inyanim von Saras HaMikra und Bebeis HaMedrash HaYeshvin. So this is connected to the two Pirushim that Rashi brings up here, whether you switch the order of the Pasik, or the fact that they're sitting in Beis Medrash together. Because both of these Pirushim highlights the importance of the Limudat Torah that is learned here below, in this world. Like what happened here when they demanded from below, and they got an answer from the Eibishter. Saras HaMikra, what does it mean to switch the order? Their Mikra, via Kutnul Maila, is not Muma. What it's telling you is that the order of the Pasuk, the way it's written and it's given from Hashem above, cannot be readily understood. The person reading it has to then reorganize it to understand. Und dafke durch dem Adam allein mit dem Saras HaMikra kommt der Begale Bavana, then you understand it. Al derech says, the same thing also, the fact that they're sitting together in Beis HaMedrash. Limud HaTorah beBeis HaMedrash is madgish di mailas halimud ha'adam amata. Sitting in Beis HaMedrash emphasizes the advantage that there is of a person studying Torah here below in this world, and each person contributing what he understands in learning Torah. Masha'enken hakala. In contrast to if it would be a place that Yidden are just gathering together. Pesach Oyel Moed, coming to the entrance of the Oyel Moed. What are they gathering for? Heren Dvar Hashem al Yedei Moshe, just to listen to the words of Hashem that's being given over through Moshe. Or Hakel Esam B'Shnas Hakel, or in a year of Hakel, to gather all together to listen to the king that reads from the Sefer Torah. Heren Dvar Hashem al Yedei Melech V'Chayetze B'Zeh. Over here they're just listeners. But and so this is mudgish mailas hamayla. So that highlights the importance of the revelation coming from above. The nikolim and blaze shaymim umekabel madvar. They're just there to listen and to accept. Biz, but on the other hand, when it comes to a Beis Medrash, biz as efshel Beis Medrash b'lei chiddush, the expression of the Gemara says that in Beis Medrash it's impossible that there should be a situation in Beis Medrash where there isn't something novel that was brought up every day, all the time when you're learning, which is primarily through the discussion that happens between all the colleagues there that are studying together. So there's new novel ideas in Torah. This is similar to Bechlal, the advantage that there is in Torah Shebal Peh over Torah Shebiksav. Torah Shebiksav is vit Torah is mitzad l'mayla. That's the part of Torah where you have the revelation of Hashem's words precisely the way it is from above. But it's hard to understand. You can't interpret the words of Torah to implement it and to bring it down into this world. In Torah Shebal Peh, Torah Shebal Peh is giving the ability of Yidden here below to bring it down, to toil and to understand and explain. Many things are completely novel that Chazal were mechadish in Torah Shebal Peh, and it's just you can lean on a pasuk. It's just an asmachta, but it's not. There's no real source for it in the lashon of the pasuk itself. So that's the idea of Beis HaMedrash that Rashi is emphasizing. And as I pointed out earlier in the Sikha, that the whole lashon of Beis HaMedrash in Rashi seems to be extra, and the Rabbi explained al Pipshutish Mikra that that's the key of what Rashi is saying. So here, al Pichsidis as well, the lashon of Beis HaMedrash is also the key of the whole Nekudah here, that it emphasizes the Maila of the Mata, of here, the limit of Torah in this world below. Now, over here, though, in Sifyur Aleph, the Rebbe will explain also, according to this pshat, the difference between the way Rashi explains the scene in Parshas Baloischa and in this week's parsha. Bringt Rashi blois dem Pirish kishishneim yeshim bebeis hamedrash. So earlier in Baloischa, Rashi only brings the pshat that they were sitting together in Beis Medrash. By Bnei Slavchad bringt beide Pirushim. And here, in this week's parsha, regarding Bnei Slavchad, he brings both. Und the Pirisha Ikri is Saris HaMikra. And the main pshat, the first pshat Rashi actually brings, is switching the order in the pasuk. The Chiluk von Saris HaMikra on Yeshvin Beis HaMedrash is, even though before the Rebbe said that generally both of them are a similar idea, emphasizing the Maila of learning Torah below, but there is a difference between them, and the difference is as follows. Saris HaMikra is Madgish dem Seder, vider Inyan is Verschriben in Torah. Talking about changing the order of the pasuk, so we're talking about what's written. That let's look at the way things are written and interpret the pshutai of the pasuk the way it's written, and we're going to have to switch the order of the written word. So we're focusing on the written word of the pasuk. Mashen kem Beis HaMedrash is madgish dem limud. Durch welche dem din wird nischadish meikare. Beis HaMedrash is a place where it's a house of study, where you learn and even innovate a completely new halacha, completely new, totally new, not connected to any written word in Torah Shebiksav. So therefore, in Parshas Pesach Sheni, was the Taina from Laman Nigara at L'Kulam V'Oiv Nayim Din. So their demand of Laman Nigara, everybody agrees, accomplished and brought down a totally new halacha. As is gesagt geworden, a Naya Parsha. Hashem came and said a new Parsha that they can bring Pesach Sheni. So here, the main chiddush is that the shaila is being asked where? Sitting at Beis Medrash. The od v'din v'ern is chadash. Beis Medrash is a place of chidushim, of novel halachas. Hashenkein in Parshas Bnei Slavchad. So Rashi, but in the Parsha of Bnei Slavchad, here Rashi says, as nisalma halacha mimenu from Moshe. That really this was already a halacha that was given from above. But Moshe Rabbeinu, it was concealed of him. The halacha is showing gesagt geworden zu Moshe. Und der Reiftu von der Bnei Slavchad is given, wie Rashi is medayik, zachu v'nichteva yadan. That it was written through them. It was brought down into ksav, into being written in the Torah through them. Als durch sie ist der halacha noch einmal nisgale geworden zu Moshe und damals verschrieben geworden in Torah. They had the merit to reveal again what was already said, that it should be written. So the emphasis here is on the writing. And the Rebbe is the Pirish Arishon Ve'ikri Saris HaMikra. So Rashi brings the main shot here regarding how this question was asked, that you reorganize the words in the way it's written in the pasuk, as das ist verschrieben geworden in Anayfin, was ist madgish der Minyan von Avedas Hamata. That the way it's written emphasizes that you have to read and understand the written word different than the way it's actually written, because this was the whole chiddush here, that they were the ones that caused this to be written. Unlike the rest of the Torah that the Eibishter says that it's written, they were the ones that decided or actually caused that it should be written. So therefore over here you read it, and the way it's interpreted in the order that you understand it has to be interpreted. But it's all focusing on the written word. But since there's another opinion, which is brought in Sifri, as euch Parshas Nachlas is in ganzen Ischadish geworden durch Bnei Slavcha, that even here as well, this halacha of Nachlas is something that was a new halacha that was now given by the Eibishter only because of the demand of Bnei Slavcha. Brengt nach Rashi, euch die Idee von Abachanan, as bei Beis Medrash HaYeshvin, that they were sitting in Beis Medrash, which is a place for Chidushim Me'ikarai, similar to Pesach Sheni. Yehi ratzin as geshem wie bakoshas uthainas bnei slavchat tno lanu achuza hat man mamshach given malmaila parshas nachlois, just like when bnei slavchat they demanded to give them an inheritance in the land, so they brought down the parsha of nachlois va'ikeru amaisa. The main thing is the action, the sinas nachla in Eretz Yisrael b'poyel. So bnei slavchat, the fact that the Eibishter actually gave them the nachla when they entered into Eretz Yisrael. So lazay zayin b'yameinu eila. The same should be fulfilled in our times. The seems managalos at the conclusion, the last days of Golos, as the bakosha. Was jeden halten in a name, beten by Meibishten. Es samach David avdochom meheiros atzmiach. And the sechzena in ene b'shuvcha letziyim berachmim, the brachas nishmenesa that we constantly beg and demand of Hashem to bring Mashiach. Zol bringen the Yula mitzvah vashlema al yedei Mashiach tzedkenu. So it should bring down the final and real true redemption of Mashiach was demolt that jeder Yidden haben bebirer und begoli sein Nachla in Eretz HaKodesh. Every Yid will know exactly what is his portion in Eretz Yisrael. Durch dem was HaKodesh Baruch Hu machalik lahem ba'atzmai. The Gemara says that when Mashiach comes, the Eibishter himself will divide the land for all of the Yidden b'meheira v'yameinu mamish.